In the year 955, England was a kingdom shrouded in a quiet unease. At its heart was a young king, Edwig, ruler of a prosperous land, yet a captive in his own mind. For months, sleep had become a phantom, a distant memory that mocked him through the long, silent nights. The royal chambers, adorned with the finest tapestries and silken sheets, felt more like a gilded cage than a sanctuary. Night after night, the king would toss and turn, his eyes wide open, staring into the oppressive darkness as his kingdom slept. The weight of his crown was heavy, but the weight of his sleeplessness was heavier still. Court physicians brought him tinctures of poppy and valerian, scholars read to him from ancient, dusty tomes, and mystics chanted quiet incantations. But nothing worked. The king's fatigue-etched lines of worrying onto his youthful face, and a shadow of exhaustion fell over the entire court. The whispers grew louder in the castle corridors. What happens to a kingdom when its king cannot find peace? The land, though outwardly calm, held its breath, waiting for the dawn that would bring relief to their suffering monarch. One night, pushed to the edge of despair, King Edwig abandoned his lavish bed. The silence of the castle was deafening, each tick of the water clock a hammer blow against his frayed nerves. He wrapped a simple cloak around his shoulders and slipped out of his chambers, a ghost haunting his own home. He wandered aimlessly through the cold stone hallways, his bare feet padding softly on the floor. The moon cast long, eerie shadows that danced like specters. He passed the great hall, the armory, the kitchens, all slumbering under the same blanket of night that offered him no comfort. He felt a profound loneliness, a sense of isolation that no king should ever know. He was a man adrift in a sea of silence, and he was beginning to think he would drown in it. The air grew cooler as he descended a winding staircase that led to an unfamiliar part of the castle. He pushed open a heavy oak door and stepped out into the crisp night air, finding himself on a terrace overlooking the royal gardens. And it was there, amidst the stillness, that he heard it. Faint at first, like the whisper of the wind through the leaves, a sound reached his ears. It wasn't the chirp of a cricket or the hoot of an owl. It was a melody, simple and pure, a human voice rising and falling with a gentle, hypnotic cadence. It was a sound so beautiful, so filled with a quiet, unassuming peace, that it seemed to physically halt the frantic racing of his thoughts. Curiosity, an emotion he hadn't felt in months, stirred within him. Who could be singing at this hour? Drawn by an invisible thread, the king descended the stone steps into the gardens. The moonlight bathed the world in silver, transforming the familiar roses and herbs into something magical, something ethereal. He followed the sound, moving deeper into the fragrant labyrinth, the music growing stronger, clearer, weaving a tapestry of calm around him. And then he saw him. Near a bed of moon-dusted lavender, a man was kneeling, a simple gardener tending to the plants. His name was Finian, a humble man whose face was kind and whose hands were calloused from a lifetime of working the earth. And as he worked, he sang. It was an old folk lullaby, a song passed down through generations, a tune meant to soothe fretful children. But in the stillness of the royal garden, it was a balm for a king's tortured soul. Hidden behind a large, flowering bush, King Edwig stood frozen, listening. The melody washed over him, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the tension in his shoulders began to ease. The frantic drumbeat in his chest slowed to a steady, rhythmic pulse. The song spoke of rolling hills and gentle streams, of stars watching over sleeping lambs. It was a song of a world at peace, a world without the burdens of state, without the crushing weight of a crown. Each note seemed to unknot a different whirring in his mind, smoothing the rough edges of his anxiety. He felt a profound sense of calm, a tranquility so deep it was almost alien to him. He closed his eyes, breathing in the scent of lavender and the sound of Finian's voice. This humble gardener, with nothing but a simple song, had achieved what the kingdom's finest minds could not. He had brought the king a sliver of peace. The music was a lifeline, and Edwig clung to it, unwilling to let it go. He knew, with a certainty that resonated deep in his bones, that this was the cure he had been so desperately seeking. After what felt like a lifetime, the song came to a gentle end, its final note lingering in the air like a sweet perfume. The silence that followed was no longer oppressive, it was peaceful, expectant. Gathering his courage and his royal authority, King Edwig stepped out from the shadows. "That was ... beautiful," he said, his voice softer than he intended. Finian, startled, scrambled to his feet, his eyes wide with shock and fear as he recognized the king. He immediately dropped to one knee, bowing his head. "Your Majesty, forgive me. I did not know anyone was listening. I often sing to the plants. They seem to grow better for it." The king smiled, a genuine, warm smile that had been absent for too long. "Rise, good man. There is nothing to forgive." He stepped closer, his royal cloak pulling around his feet. "I have not known a moment's peace in months. Your song ... it has quieted a storm inside me." The king's voice was filled with a raw vulnerability, a plea that transcended his royal station. "I have a request, a strange one perhaps. Would you ... would you come to my chambers and sing for me there?" Finian looked up, his face a canvas of disbelief and nervousness. "Sing for the King of England." In the royal bedchamber, the idea was terrifying. But looking into the young king's exhausted eyes, he saw not a monarch demanding a service, but a man in desperate need of help. Swallowing his fear, Finian nodded slowly. "It would be my honor, Your Majesty." They walked back through the silent castle, a strange pair, the king in his simple cloak and the gardener in his earth-stained tunic. The royal guards, standing sentinel outside the king's chambers, stared in stunned silence as their monarch entered, followed by a man who smelled of soil and lavender. Inside, the opulent room was lit by a few flickering candles. The king dismissed his attendants and gestured towards a simple wooden stool near the grand four-poster bed. As Edwig settled back against the mountain of pillows, Finian sat, his heart pounding in his chest. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and began to sing. He sang the lullaby from the garden, his voice soft but clear in the still room. He sang of the moon and the stars, of the quiet earth settling into its nightly slumber. The king's eyes, which had been wide with a familiar, weary tension, began to soften. The lines of stress on his forehead smoothed away. Finian continued, moving from one gentle folk song to another, his voice a steady, comforting presence in the darkness. He poured all the peace of his garden, all the simple kindness of his heart, into the music. Before the third song was finished, he heard a change in the king's breathing. It had deepened, becoming slow and even. He risked a glance and saw that King Edwig's eyes were closed, his face finally relaxed in the embrace of a deep, peaceful sleep. For the first time in months, the King of England was truly at rest. The next morning, the sun streamed into the royal chambers, bathing everything in a golden light. King Edwig awoke slowly, feeling a sense of refreshment he thought he had lost forever. The world seemed sharper, more vibrant. The crushing weight on his chest was gone, replaced by a feeling of lightness and joy. He felt reborn. He sat up, a wide smile spreading across his face, and saw Finian asleep on the stool, his head resting against the bedpost. The king felt a wave of immense gratitude for this humble gardener. When Finian awoke, he found the king beaming at him. "You have given me a gift beyond measure," Edwig declared, his voice full of life. "A kingdom cannot thrive without a rested king, and you have given me back my rest. This cannot go unrewarded." That very day, a royal decree was issued. Finian the gardener was no more. In his place stood Finian the royal minstrel, a new title created just for him. He was given fine clothes, a room in the castle, and a beautiful lute crafted by the finest artisan in the land. But his greatest reward was the king's friendship and the knowledge that his gift could bring such profound peace. His fame soon spread beyond the castle walls. Word of the gardener whose voice could cure sleeplessness traveled throughout the kingdom. Finian began to travel the land, visiting towns and villages, his lute on his back and a song in his heart. He sang for nobles in their grand manors and for common folk in their humble cottages. He sang for restless children, worried parents, and weary soldiers. His lullabies became a legendary comfort, his melodies weaving themselves into the very fabric of England. Finian, the humble gardener who sang to his plants, became a beloved figure, a wandering minstrel whose music was a promise of a good night's sleep and a peaceful heart for all. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story of peace and music, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more tales from history and legend. We'll see you in the next video.